Dear class, welcome back to State and Local Politics. This week, I am giving you feedback, but more or less summarizing the readings on cybersecurity. So this week, you had to look at various readings related to cybersecurity, and some of them focused on a very international and state level, and others focused more on local levels, right? We also watched some videos about robotics, but this lecture will not cover that. So what was the purpose of the assignment? So that's something that we will have to answer. The purpose was for you to basically look at types of information related to cybersecurity policy, right? At the federal and at the state and local levels. So the readings that I'm going to cover are the four general papers that talk about cybersecurity at the international and the national level, and one more which will focus on the local level. So let's start with the Kaur and Ramkumar paper, which is 2022. This was a rather technical piece. I am not an expert on cybersecurity by any means. I could not follow a lot of what was said there. Basically, it goes over the field of cybersecurity. It talks about the international scene, what nations are doing about cybersecurity. And it talks about types of cyber crimes and threats. It also talks about types of security, such as the DES algorithm. After this point, the paper becomes difficult for me to follow. I'm not a computer science or information systems person, and so I could not really keep up with the rest of the paper. However, I thought this was a good piece for people to read because it gives you an idea of the technical nature of the field. It's a very technical field, right? But it also talks a little bit about the social aspect. The next paper is the Van Solms Van Niekerk paper, published in 2013. And here we start to talk more about the software, hardware, but in a way that we can understand. So they basically compare and contrast information security with cybersecurity. So this is a very interesting thing to do. I had never thought that these were quite different. However, they say that information security protects data and related systems, right? Whereas cybersecurity protects data, systems, and also people. Sometimes people are targets of cyber crimes. So this was interesting to know. It also offers an introduction to what nations are doing, just like the previous article, and looks sort of kind of says, look, 50 nations have had some kind of program, but this is published in 2013, and so it's less current than Kaur and Ramkumar's paper. Joseph Nye's paper was, for me, my favorite piece out of all of these readings. He was related to, he's a political scientist and actually focuses on international relations. And he actually worked at the government level as a international security advisor. And if you read the paper, he kind of talks about the fact that he was an expert, or rather, he was part of a team which was looking at cybersecurity issues at the government level. So he goes into the social aspect of technology and how it impacts society. So every time there's a major technological change, we see major changes in the way society is organized. And he talks about the introduction of gunpowder, the industrial revolutions, the nuclear revolution, and the information revolution. And we are right now in the information age, right? And he talks about the rise of the internet through military. He also points out that the internet is not just a digital common, but it is really a very highly regulated space. It's also not a simple kind of commons. We have 195 nations right now, and many of them are regulating and policing the internet. He also brings up the fact there are international agencies that police and regulate the internet. There are also businesses offering some kind of service that are related to what we call the internet. There are nonprofits also part of this industry. So it's a very complicated space. It's not just a common space that we can all just, share together. And it's really full of all these laws, all this policing going on, but also crime. And there's also this industry aspect to it. There are people who are producing software, hardware, but also people who are invested in security apparatus, right? So many types of services also being offered. There are also nonprofits which are related to the computer information systems industries. So he talks about the fact that the government is not the only player. So as far as regulation, we always think, well, the federal government, because, it's the internet, right? It's not something that's happening within one state necessarily. Internet crosses boundaries, state boundaries all the time, right? So we think that is just going to be the government. However, we find that it's not that simple. In governments, you have legislative bodies making laws about the internet. In the US, you have Congress making laws about the internet. However, we have corporations, we have nonprofit leaders. We also have people involved and groups with a lot of power, with technologies that can be used to do harm. And so it's not simple regulating the internet. Corporations and nonprofits. So there are many types of corporations and nonprofits involved. Corporations are creating computers, Wi-Fi satellite services, computer software, hardware, cell phones, operating systems, applications, and also cybersecurity related services and programs, right? We also have nonprofits where you have experts basically offering consultation or advice to industry leaders, to the government sector, and to others in the public about internet safety, but also talking about threats to the internet and things like that. So you have many actors involved in the industry. And lastly, you have groups and individuals. You have cyber criminals. These could be individuals or groups. Some have political interests, some have financial interests for what they do. They use the weaknesses of the system and the hardware to attack the information system. But you also have individuals and groups that are protecting. the system, right? So you have all kinds of things happening and people involved. The pros and cons of the paper. So I think it was very good that he talked about all these issues, but also talks about the cyber iron triangle, the fact that industry, Congress, and the executive branch, they're all trying to legislate, but there's no clear center of power. Um, but I think I mean, he doesn't talk enough about the revolving door, the fact that people from corporations later get into government jobs and vice versa. He also doesn't talk about the federal government as a source of research and development funding for Silicon Valley and other tech companies, and does not talk about government contracting. I mean, often the government hires people and companies to engage in services that it cannot provide or does not wish to provide openly. So this was a great paper. And then now I think another very good paper was the Toch Bettini et al. 2018 paper, where they so raise the issue of how much cybersecurity is too much cybersecurity, meaning that there are compromises to be made. Every time you install a cybersecurity system to protect data systems and hardware, they only come across breaches of security when they are detecting the information that's traveling from one part of the computer system to the other. And so they're saying that cybersecurity systems actually breach the privacy of the individuals and groups. Supposedly they're protecting data, but actually they are themselves in some kind of compromise situation where uh, it's legal, but actually it is breaching the privacy. And if it's doing that, then how is it really securing anything? So they talk about different types of cybersecurity threats, the different types of privacy risks, different types of attacks, different types of sites of attacks. They talk about the hardware attack, network attack, application attack. They talk about cybersecurity systems and tools. And finally, they talk about how computer architecture will determine the best type of cybersecurity system. So these papers are definitely worth a read. Finally, you have the Norris Matexun et al. Paper 2018, and then later they have the 2021 paper. Here I'm talking a little bit about the 2018 paper. So they look at cybersecurity threats at the local level, at the town, city, municipal, county, etc., right? Government level. So they're saying that at this level, the government is actually quite exposed. They don't have enough manpower or money to protect their data systems. And they talk about the number of attacks that have um, occurred on government sites, data information system sort of attacks. And they show that a large section of those occurred at the local and state government levels. And they also saw that local governments in the US are spending billions of dollars on cybersecurity. In 2019, it was estimated to be about 70 billion. And in 2014, it was 60.4 billion. And in a much later 2021 paper, Norris Matexun and others look at the national level to see what's happening, more sort of current update. Let's look at some other things. So one thing they also talk about is the frequency of attacks on colleges and universities, especially public ones. This is on the rise, and essentially these are ransomware attacks and other kinds of attacks. Okay, so let's look at some other issues. How does federalism fit in? So, as we know, federalism is the system of government in the US where we have state governments have some powers, federal governments have particular types of powers. With the issue of cyber crimes and cybersecurity, we know it's involving the internet, and so the federal government has a large role to play. Because the crime happens online, it's not restricted to any physical borders. We know that the federal government deals with issues of internet commerce as well as interstate crime, and internet crime is just, one more of those issues. So states, we know, can regulate and police what happens within their borders. But if things cross borders, then it becomes a federal issue. And you have the FBI, the NSA, Secret Service, all of these groups involved. The federal government also offers states funding to address law enforcement locally and statewide. Each federal agency plays particular roles. The FBI gets involved when a person is targeted or harmed. The Secret Service addresses financial crimes. The NSA addresses cyber attacks. So let's stop here. And, I think what would be really good is once you're done with this set of readings, uh, to look at the papers, the other papers if you're interested, and see if you can learn something more than what's being shared here. So I will talk to you in the next video.